How many protons, neutrons, and electrons are in the following elements? 35 Br. Br stands for bromine, which is element 35 on the periodic table. The number 35 is the atomic number, which tells us the number of protons. So for this element, there are 35 protons. The second number present, the 80, is the mass number, which tells us the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. So how many neutrons are in bromine 35? Well, with a mass number of 80, that is protons plus neutrons. If we subtract the known number of protons, 35, we get 45 neutrons. Okay. And how many electrons? Well, since this is a neutral element, it should have the same number of electrons as it has protons. So 35 electrons. So for bromine, we have 35 protons, 45 neutrons, and 35 electrons. Let's talk Ca, which stands for calcium. Calcium has an atomic number of 20, meaning it has 20 protons, and a mass number of 40. Again, the mass number is the protons plus the neutrons. So to determine protons, or rather to determine neutrons, we subtract the protons. So 40 minus 20 is 20. So calcium has 20 protons, 20 neutrons. Since it is a neutral element and not a charged ion, it must also have the same number of electrons. So 20 protons, 20 neutrons, 20 electrons. Okay. Now let's determine the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons and name the element for the following. Atomic number 13, mass number 27, and an ion with a charge of +3. So you may remember from your notes and from lecture that the atomic number is the defining characteristic of the element. It is the number of protons in that element, and it is the only thing you can use to determine the element for this particular problem. So the atomic number of 13 tells us to look for element 13 on the periodic table, which is aluminum. Aluminum has 13 protons. Again, the atomic number tells you the number of protons, which is the defining characteristic of the element. The mass number tells you the protons plus the neutrons. So to determine the neutrons, you would subtract the known number of protons from the mass number. So 27 minus 13 is 14. So we have 13 protons and 14 neutrons. And this is no longer a neutral element, this is an ion. It has a charge of +3. So we are trying to determine the number of electrons. If we started with 13 electrons in the neutral element and we have a charge of +3, did we lose electrons or gain them? Well, since we've gone to be more positive, we must have lost electrons. And how many did we lose? 1 for each charge. So with a +3, that means we lost 3 electrons. Again, we started with 13, we lost 3, we now have 10 electrons. So 13, 14, and 10. Example B says atomic number 16, mass number 32, and a charge of -2. Again, the atomic number tells you the number of protons and is the defining characteristic of the element. So it tells us what element we're looking for. If we look at our periodic table and we find element 16, we will see that that is sulfur. Sulfur. So sulfur has 16 protons. Okay. With a mass number of 32, we can determine the neutrons. So if we take 32 and subtract 16, we should get 16. So we have 16 protons and 16 neutrons. In a neutral element, we would also have 16 electrons. However, with a charge of -2, we are not neutral. Since our charge is negative, we must have gained some negativity, right? Electrons are negative. Therefore, we gained electrons. How many did we gain? 1 for each negative charge. With a charge of -2, that means we must have gained 2 electrons. Since a neutral element would have 16, we have gained 2 more, we must have had 18 electrons. Thank you for listening.